I'm going to start recording. All right, we're recording. Are we ready? Y'all are good?
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Okay.
Too good.
Nervous. Okay. All right. Everybody shut up. Everybody stop talking. Okay. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Tackle Box. I'm your host, Hannah Ford. Today is going to be a little different. I'm joined by my mom, Amy, and my boyfriend, Caleb, talking all things college football. So we're just gonna get right into it. Lots of good things this week. Mainly Arkansas. Arkansas is probably the biggest game this week, but I want to start out with two other SEC matchups. So let's start with Florida at Tennessee. Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I'll start. So for Tennessee, I think it's a kind of an overrated game. I think Florida's kind of overrated just because they beat Utah first game of the year. Utah's ranked seventh, so they beat a top 10 team and immediately jumped up to number 12 in the polls, and then they barely beat a I think it's South Florida last week. Barely beat a poor South Florida team last week at Gainesville. So I mean, Anthony Richardson, the quarterback, is supposed to be a top NFL draft prospect, and yet hasn't thrown a single touchdown pass. And I, Tennessee, in my opinion, Tennessee's got one of the best offenses in the country. It's going to be a great atmosphere at Neyland Stadium. I don't think it's going to be much of a ball game, but I don't know. Who knows? Conference play is crazy, so
Yeah,
we'll see where it goes from there. Yeah, it might be good for a quarter or two, but I don't know about much more than that.
mom.
I agree. I think Florida was overrated to start with just because they beat Utah, jumped way up, like Caleb said, and I just don't think that they're what they think they are, and it's hard to play in Neyland Stadium and pull out a win. So I'm going with Tennessee.
I agree. I feel like that's the case with a lot of those teams, like of Florida, who, I feel like they used to kind of be top dogs in the SEC, like back in the day, but now it's like they're below average most years. And I feel like people maybe expect more from them than they can actually give. And so I definitely think Tennessee's going to run away with that one. Like you said, it's going to be hard to go to Knoxville and play and come out with a win. Um, so yeah, moving on to two teams. It's a matter of what did you say earlier? Whose coach is going to get fired first? Missouri at Auburn. So, Mom, do you want to start?
There's not a whole lot to say about this one. Being in Auburn, they'll probably pull it out, but both coaches are. I mean, I know Harson's on the hot seat, not so much about Drinkowitz. Um, I don't know. I think Auburn will probably pull this one out since it is at Auburn, but I'm not sure how much of a game it'll be.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. I agree. I had a lot of starting quarterback issues at Auburn. Missouri's just got a whole bunch of issues, but Auburn, they've TJ Finley. He's done an okay job so far, just managing, trying not to completely lose every game. But he's actually out this week. They announced earlier either today or yesterday that he's out. Robbie Ashford is going to get the start for Auburn um, on Saturday. So he's going to be more of a capable quarterback, more of an athletic, more. I think he's going to be just more of a better talent at the quarterback spot. So, see, they got Tank Bigsby, one of the best returning backs, not just the SEC, but all of college football. And what a name, Tank Bigsby for running back.
I want to say
So
he gave
we'll,
us some trouble last year, right?
uh, Yeah,
Yeah.
That Auburn game is just don't worry about this. I don't remember anything. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how Auburn performs with a new starter at quarterback. I think they may have a little more energy, a little more juice. You know, if for some reason Auburn loses this game, I don't think Harsin makes it out the weekend. I think he gets a Scott Frost treatment either Saturday night or Sunday. He's out and possibly making a few phone calls in Nebraska. So
Mm.
uh, I think it'll be an interesting game as far as what Auburn team shows up. You know, I think it'll be a rejuvenized and energetic uh, team who's going to fight, and the quarterback is going to bring some energy and a spark. So
Well,
very interested in this game.
and I've said this before that with all sports, it's all about what team is going to show up that week and what team is going to come out and play. And like us Arkansas fans have known that sometimes you just don't have it. And so
Yeah,
do we think that that's maybe a case here? Is it coaching for either team? Are they just not that good? Is it a coaching change that needs to happen? What is it? What's the key to
I think it.
saving
I
these
think
teams?
it's a little bit of both. I think maybe in Auburn's case, it's more of a coaching. You know, they've got talent. It's Auburn. They're not been successful in the SEC for so many years lately. You know, they've got talent. They've been able to recruit. I think it's more of a um, um, you know, yes, they may not have the top talent, but I think it's a lot of coaches not playing to their strength. You know, they've got, for instance, quarterback starting this week is probably a much more athletic, much more capable quarterback who just hadn't had any real, experience yet on the college level. So I think TJ Finley gave him a little more experience in the SEC, so they just rode with him, just hoping that would be enough. Obviously, it wasn't. Um, so I think it's a little bit of them maybe not evaluating or trusting their guys, and maybe not rolling with the best scheme to fit who they have. So um, it's going to be interesting. And Missouri, he's recruited pretty decent for Missouri. I mean,
For a
it's
below average program
yeah. I
most
mean
years.
it. So he had a good season his first year, and they've Missouri for some reason has always had Arkansas's number for the past few years. So, but
Mhm.
I mean they've recruited well. Last year they got a few freshmen that are making some impacts and some transfers. So it'll be interesting. One thing though that I think is really going to make the difference is we all kind of said earlier about like the spark and the energy. You hear about Brian Harsin at Auburn being the hot seat. You don't really hear just a whole lot about Drinkwitz at Missouri being the hot seat. He's just at Missouri, and
Mhm.
they've had great years in the SEC since they've been in the SEC East, but he's not really getting the same um, coverage as far as uh, failures and disappointments as far as Harsin has. So I think it's going to be a big. I think it's just going to be more of a motivating factor for Auburn than Missouri, as far as coaches on the hot seat and playing for their coach.
I think some of that goes to the fact too that Auburn has been such a power in the SEC. Maybe not the champion, but they've played to that potential, and Missouri hasn't always been that powerhouse in the SEC. And a lot of people are expecting a lot of things from Auburn. And I don't think a lot of their fans were crazy about the Harsin hire. And I mean, what is it, his second year? And it's kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to give the guy a chance?
Do
I don't
you
know.
Well,
do you
and
think
think
that
about it.
losing somebody like a Bo Nix, really hurt them as much as, they may have thought? I'm just an idea of
Maybe
where they
maybe
went
from like a
wrong.
team, maybe a team chemistry. standpoint. He'd been there for a while, so I mean, he was a leader. He may not have been great on the field, except for against Arkansas. He was
He had
always
that
good,
respect.
but he was a leader, and so that may have some stuff. But also, it's interesting too is back to y'all's point about the success they've had in the SEC. Don't let's not forget that he almost had a Bobby Petrino-esque summer this year with scandals, and was he with this this female on staff? Was he with her? I mean, they had some scandal stuff, and it looked like that Auburn was trying to make some moves to get rid of him during the summer. But he's still here, but that's obviously got him on a shorter leash too. So, no, not a
Yeah.
whole lot of room for error.
Yeah.
If they don't play potential, it definitely gives them a chance to get rid.
Right.
And Mom, I think, you made the exact point that I was thinking, when you have a few decent years like Missouri, but you're not, there's no real expectations. I think that that's where the two teams differ in the sense that, like, when you do have an Auburn who is typically pretty good team, I feel like there's more that's expected out of them. So,
Yeah.
let's pivot now to the what is it? Southwest Classic.
Southwest Classic. Yeah.
So Arkansas and A&M Saturday. I want to before we get into that, I want to kind of the dogs. I want to kind of of course. I want to kind of get into last week's game against Missouri State. I know that we did come out with a win, but it was kind of an ugly win. Mom, you were there. Talk a little bit about the atmosphere and, Petrino coming back for what I believe is the first time since he left Arkansas in 2011 ish.
Yes.
How was
12,
it?
yeah.
We're in there, yeah. The atmosphere was great when the game started, and then when Missouri State ran off 17-0, it was everybody was totally shocked. It's like the crowd just kind of sat there like, wow, what is going on? Is this really going to happen? And I don't think anybody ever gave up on the fact that Arkansas could come back last week, but it was still a shock because nobody expected, which we all should have known though, because Petrino is a great
He's that man.
he has a great offensive mind, and he finds a way to move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank goodness for the punt return for a touchdown, and of course we shot ourselves in the foot too in the first quarter. Turnover right there on the not even the 1 yard line, more like the 1 inch line.
Yeah.
And then turnover or a fumble earlier by KJ. That was actually the first turnover, and that kind of sucked a little air out of them too, I think. A lot of people talked about the fact that they overlooked Missouri State. Looking forward to this week to A&M. I'm not so sure they really overlooked them, as maybe they may have just a little bit of underestimated them. But like I said, you got Petrino. He's a great offensive mind, and he finds a way to move the ball regardless of what team he's with.
He was here for a reason. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my thought going into it. I'm like, oh, they're going to think we're just playing Missouri State. And I'm like, no, you're playing Bobby Petrino. I mean, like that's a totally different, that's a totally different game when you've got somebody who is a powerhouse in the SEC. Like it didn't matter. I think a lot of it, yes, it all, it eventually boils down to talent. But if you have people who know how to coach people,
yeah,
don't count them out.
A lot of his team is made up of D1 transfers this year that he went out and got out of the portal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could pass as a D1 team. Want to look at it in that respect also.
Yeah.
Yeah, top 10 team in the FCS.
Yeah, they're like number 5 in their division.
Yeah.
So they're there
And
for a
don't
reason.
forget, they went wire to wire with Oklahoma State last year, and Oklahoma State I think finished like 10-2 or really
Yeah,
great season, went to a really good bowl game. So I mean,
yeah.
it's just Bob Petrino. I would argue honestly, Arkansas won't face a better game planner or offensive, play caller or schemer
I
uh,
don't.
Yeah.
better the rest of the year. I mean, uh, if he had any more talent, if they were an FBS school, they probably would have beat us.
Yeah.
You know,
They finally just.
Kiffin, you've got Jimbo, you've got Kiffin, you've got Hugh Freeze coming in with Liberty later. That's scary.
Mm.
You've got a lot of great coaches that are great play callers and know how to call offensive side of the ball, but it also helps that they have actual talent and athletes. And don't get me mistaken, Missouri State had D1 players
Yeah,
come through the transfer portal, multiple D1 players
yeah.
from former D1, Power Five schools. So they had talent,
Their
but
quarterback Utah guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
but no, and honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily like how it got to it. I would have rather a more comfortable game, but it was honestly, it felt good knowing that we are good enough to come back from those, because 2 years ago,
Absolutely not. We wouldn't have even been
when
in
when
that game.
in
We would
eighteen
have gone home
nineteen
the first
when
quarter.
when he who shall not be spoken of was our head coach, we no, they would have just kept piling on, and we would have had no answers. Players
We
would have
would have
quit,
been
and
embarrassed.
yeah,
you have a coach that the players love and will run through a big
yeah,
brick, and they never laid down last week. They just kept fighting, and they finally were able to get over that hump to get the lead.
Yeah.
right.
So with, you know, us just kind of squeaking by last week, we're facing A&M this week. And this is
Who has squeaked by every week
Every
so far,
right, right. This
except for
fun.
right. This is always a big game for us, and this is the start of a long couple of weeks. This is, really going to be the telltale of how I think the rest of our season may go. Just considering the next, like, we have what, Alabama, Mississippi State, BYU coming up. That's
Yes.
a tough 3 weeks. So going off of what we just talked about from last week, what do we have to do differently this week in order to seal the deal against A&M?
Protect.
tackle, tackle. Looking
Tackle.
back at
Big
yeah,
time.
looking back at it, coverage. We got beat a few times, but looking back at it, there was quite a few times where we had guys wrapped up, or we had guys, corralled that we over pursued, or we didn't wrap up. We tried just hitting, or we were flat footed, and they just ran through us. I mean, coverage. You're going to get beat every once in a while, but it doesn't help when you get beat and get ran over or ran through, and so tackling is the biggest thing. We're getting. You're going to talk about it a little bit, I'm sure, but Miles Slusher coming back, that's going to help a lot. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but tackling, I mean, if you can't fundamentally tackle, it doesn't matter if you can
What's
cover
the
or not,
point? Right.
because I mean, you're just going to run with them at that point if you're not going to tackle them. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be important that we come out of this game with no injuries also with
yeah.
Alabama week.
Yeah. What what I guess what are the strengths of Arkansas, the weaknesses of Arkansas, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of A&M, and how are those going to make or break either team?
So I would probably say, for Arkansas, of course, it's the run game and KJ Jefferson. Honestly, just overall experience for Arkansas. A&M brought in that big number one all time recruiting class. So they've got talent, but in
Are they
the
even
SEC
playing?
and really just college football to begin with, talent doesn't really matter unless you've got some experience to go along with it. Look at for example, our offense, Arkansas's offense, every every player on that offense is a junior or a senior except for Rocket Sanders.
Yeah.
So you've got experience all across the board. Over 100 combined starts for our offensive linemen. Compared to I think it was like 44 for just for Texas A&M's offensive line. So experience is definitely a key for a something that Arkansas can have a feather in the cap. But and then you got the run game, of course, with the big nasties up front, and then you got Rocket, you got KJ, and then hopefully Dom comes back. Dominic Johnson comes back this week. AJ Green, Rashad Dominion looked really well. He's looked really well at this point for a freshman. So and then I mean even our wideouts this year, as a depth standpoint, we're much deeper than last year. We don't have that number one guy like Burks, but we've got Hazelwood, Landers who are matching that production.
Yeah, they have more bodies that are able.
And
well, and you're able to not target just for one person, kind of like
right.
last year. You're able to kind of pick and choose who to throw.
And then not only that, you've got capable running backs, that are able to catch it out of the backfield, and Trey Knox, who's been a great, great hand so far. So, and looking at A&M, they're only averaging, I think, it's like 8.6, giving up 8.6 points per game. Great defense, maybe even better than their defense last year. But they played Miami, who's put up numbers against not very good teams. They got beat by Appalachian State, but it was a close game, low scoring game. And then Sam Houston State, who knows how that happened, but they've got a great defense. It's a very bend but don't break. Once they get to about the 40, once opponents start getting about that 40-yard line, they start buckling down and say, okay, you're not going to do anything past this point.
Well, if you think of ours, has kind of been that way too. They get the ball down the field and then hold a field goal or make it to where they hunt. They've been bend but don't break.
I mean, and they got Max Johnson starting at quarterback now instead of Haynes King, who Johnson was he started out. He went 6-6 at LSU as a starter. He's very capable, more of a game manager. He's not just going to take over a game, not going to just razzle dazzle you. I think he's like 10 of 20 for 140 yards last week against Miami. But he's not going to necessarily put the ball in harm's way like Haynes King. Turnovers are going to be big. Turnovers in this game are going to be big. If that's what's going to, in my opinion, turnovers and how our secondary plays is the only way that Arkansas loses. If we lose the turnover battle, we have 3 turnovers and they don't have any or one, and then we get beat a few times. But very capable. They've got some 5-star freshman receivers coming back. They've got they were missing a couple offensive linemen or one offensive lineman a couple weeks ago. He played last week. He was not completely healthy last week, so maybe see how his progression is going. But it's going to be an interesting game that they're going to be a little more healthier this week against us and see how their offense actually plays. But like I said earlier, we've got to tackle, and like everybody's been saying, Amy, you were saying, you've got to hold on the ball, you got to protect the ball, and you just got to tackle. Just try to keep everybody in front of you and tackle.
So
the turnovers we had last week were very not uncommon for us so far this year.
Yeah.
Well, that the interception, Trey Knox should have caught it. The Rocket fumble on the 1-yard line on the goal line. there wasn't much he could do. That point, that's just, you got to give it up to the defender. He was at the right spot. He made a great play in the ball. I mean, I can't remember if he had two hands on the ball or not, but it wasn't one of those situations. He's just
He got
very
flipped
loose and
over.
casual with it.
He,
I mean,
he flipped.
Yeah.
He got
so that was a great play by them. But also, if you look at it too, Keytron Jackson, when he made that big long catch and tried to stretch out across the goal line, very easily could have fumbled that ball. Very easily could have fumbled. So at that point, before the Rocket fumble, right before the fumble, he tried stretching out and luckily was down, but fumble and the ball got loose. You just got to be smart and realize that one play at that moment early on in the game, be safe rather than you made a great play. Don't ruin it by giving them the ball. So turnovers, tackling, and covering guys is the only. Those are the three things Arkansas has to do to win. Those are only ways, in my opinion, A&M can beat them. Is if they.
And I haven't really watched a lot of A&M games because I've been at the Arkansas games this year. How is their run game? Because our run defense has been pretty stellar,
pretty solid.
So I would say they got involved last week. They've got a great stable of running backs. A-Chain and Smith. A-Chain is a fast man. So he is like an all-American sprinter. I think he had like 18 carries for 88 yards last week, 66, 88, something like that. And I've heard multiple players and coaches speak on the fact that if they do not tackle him, he will take it to the house. I mean, he also, another thing too, we've been susceptible when we don't kick it out of the back of the end zone. We've been susceptible to pretty good chunks of returns on kickoffs or punts or whatever on special teams. So, and he returns kicks. You got to tackle. Offensively they haven't been special. Appalachian State, they kind of controlled the clock, just played keep away with them. So they didn't have a whole lot of possessions and a whole lot of time with the ball. And I think that might be what Arkansas does. Not necessarily trying to play keep away because that's just our game. We're going to try to,
we're going to go
fast, but we're going to control the clock by running the football. So
that's what Missouri State had on us last week too. Is the time of possession was so lopsided.
Yeah,
like at the end of the first half, it was just crazy what the time of possession was. So we do have to do better in controlling some of the time.
Yeah. And, offensively, let me make this point real fast. Offensively, train of thought. Offensively, be foolish not to try to take some shots and try to open up the passing game. I mean, why won't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Seeing how the Cincinnati game, he missed some wide open throws. South Carolina, I don't care what anybody says, they had 188 passing yards going into the fourth quarter, and he had 183 in the fourth quarter alone. That was garbage time passing. We were just trying to ride out the clock. And then Missouri State was Missouri State. Bud Petrino did his thing.
Yeah.
So they would be foolish not to try to air the ball out. But if they try to air the ball out, and it doesn't work, they're in a hole because incompletions stop the clock. And if you get too many incompletions and Arkansas gets the ball and they're successful running the ball and playing their offense, it's going to be hard to beat them because you can't score when you don't get first downs and make completions. And so.
Well, we've only got a couple more minutes left on this little meeting thing. So just to kind of wrap things up, after this week's game, what do you think the next few weeks looks like for Arkansas?
Tough.
Difficult. Tough. Difficult.
Do we come out of Arlington with the win? Let's just start with that. Let's get predictions. I say yes. I say yes.
Yes.
I think so. Like, just depends on if Arkansas can run the ball and stop the pass, and A&M can, if they can win. If A&M can pass the ball and stop the run, they win. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simple. And I know Arkansas week, defensively to try to shore up some of those weak spots that we.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you guys for joining me. We're running out of time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I will have both of them on for next week's episode talking about this Arkansas A&M game and everything else that's gone on this week. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.